feed you, then every bum you talk to about it is gonna show up here looking for a free lunch. And this is not an Arby's.
Well, Arby's didn't have free lunch, it was a restaurant.
Sooner or later, there'll be raiders. They'll come at night, quiet and armed.
Call Joel. We'll be fine.
Welcome back, everybody, to Real Time for the Real Everyday Movie Fan. I am, of course, Josh Williams.
And I'm James Sheridan.
Thank you so much for joining us here today, because we are here to give you our spoiler review and breakdown of The Last of Us Episode 3 for Season 1. Nothing much has changed as far as the cast. The only two big ones names are Nick Offerman, who's coming as Bill. And then lastly, we have...
Murray Bartlett as Frank.
Yep. There we go. Murray Bartlett as Frank. Now, this is the first time, really. So, in the game, you never really meet Frank. You only hear about him because in the game he has already passed away.
Yeah, you
so
find
it's
his
kind of good
corpse.
to see. Yeah, it's kind of good to see Frank as an actual character. In a way, we'll get to that. That's something different. But let's just go ahead and jump right into the review. Now, if you guys like what you've seen so far of our reviews of these, and you also like the other content we provide, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you can receive all that great content, as I just stated before, and the more we have coming up soon. I know I'm going to be doing a top 10 best of the year last year. I wanted to wait a little bit to watch the rest of the movies because where I'm from, you don't really get to see all of them early. So, but look out for that. And also, Ryan just did a Picard review, reaction to the trailer. Check that out. So let's get into this, James.
And
I'm
full
gonna start
disclosure,
first.
full disclosure that this episode, we're going to be spoiler heavy for this episode, but nothing beyond that. We both played the game, as we stated in our last two episode reviews. We're not going to discuss things beyond like vague sort of hints and whatnot for anything that comes after this, just this episode and anything that's come before it.
Yep, so this is your spoiler warning right here. We'll even have it up here. We do it every time we have your spoiler alert, so that way if you haven't seen it, the episode yet, come back, watch it, and go watch it, come back and join in the discussion, because we talk, I think we do really good breakdowns of the episodes, and I give our thoughts on it. I would think objectively and subjectively, because there's things we and you, as you work in the filmmaking industry, I'm just starting out in it as a cinematographer, so I would think we do have objective eyes for certain things, but there's also subjective, what's close to us, which that's for me, that's why I want to start off first. This episode is a lot more, my score and reactions to this would be more subjective. I'm just going to put that out there first. Objectively speaking, this episode was beautiful. It was well shot. It was a well-told story. It was beautifully told story. This is completely diverges? That's the right word? Yeah. From the game drastically. It's the story of Bill and Frank, how they met in their relationship throughout this apocalypse. And in the original game, if you don't know, that Frank was already dead, so when you finally meet Bill, he's kind of this disgruntled old man, and just kind of hates the world kind of thing, which I did like how they kind of already fed into that. So, but for me, I'm going to give my score and give you why, because I know it's probably going to shock James, because we're going to probably have a deep discussion with this. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. Now, this is due to my objective score and my subjective score. Let me be clear. Objectively, this is a 9.5, 10. Easy. The game, from a show on its own, for its own merits, the story was beautiful. I teared up twice, especially the first time when... again, we're going to spoilers, so I really don't care. When Frank says his last day, like when he said I can't do it, I teared up because this episode is a love story between Bill and Frank, which is completely different from the game. And then I teared up again when you realize that, shockingly, that shocked the hell out of me, that Bill kills himself with Frank. It was like, so that to me, it was all beautiful. Subjectively, it's gorgeous. She shot, well-told story, good character development of Frank and of Bill, especially Bill. Starts off with this disgruntled man, and Frank introduces a different side to him. On the subjective side, as the fan of the game in me, I like I said, I'm very torn because I love the episode, but at the same time, as a fan of the game, I wanted to see certain things on live action screen.
Yeah.
I feel like I got stolen from me. The banter between him and Ellie, the relationship, the deeper relationship between him and Joel.
There's also set pieces that are really sort of memorable from the game. There's a trap that Bill sets very early on that Joel gets caught in, where he's hung upside down, and you as the player have to try and shoot an oncoming horde of zombies, or as infected, as Ellie's trying to cut you down. Mm-hmm. And not only is it a huge introduction to Bill, but it's like it's not just a memorable, set piece. It's like a very thrilling part of the game. Yeah. But that said, it's a game mechanic.
Exactly,
and that's where we're coming into. Work a little differently.
Exactly, that's where I'm coming into. Like that's why I wanted to make that clear that objectively, if I was to watch the show and I've only ever watched the show, sorry about cough. I would have thought this is a beautiful episode. Bill's awesome. Frank is great. I loved how they kind of weave in Joel and Tess. All of that. Them dealing with raiders, like him setting up his Home Alone traps. It's all awesome. Like, I loved it. But since I know the game and there's certain things I was coming into hoping, like we both knew and we're both okay with them deviating from the game, especially since the creator is making the show. Mm-hmm. And I even watched the after thing that they have at the end of the episodes, kind of like the behind the scenes stuff. And they talked about if they can afford to deviate and make something improve, then they will. And they felt like this was one they could do. I get it, but they're to me, one of the my favorite parts of the whole game, and I know it's small, but the most enjoyment I have was I keep saying it, the banter between him and Ellie, between Bill and Ellie. To me, the shit talking they did between another, to me, I laughed my ass off throughout the whole game, when they were with each other. And like you said, that scene where I know it's a game mechanic, but that scene where you get introduced to Bill, where Joel's hanging upside down and Ellie has to fight off the horde. Things like that also, I was hoping to come in to see, and I don't want to say I feel like I got robbed of it, because I'm entitled to something. But you know what I mean? I knew they were going to deviate, but I didn't expect this drastic of a deviation. But at the same time, it's a beautiful deviation. So I don't know.
There's another scene within that sort of time period too that I was really hoping to see, and based on the trailers, they're putting somewhere else,
right? Because
it's an introduction of a new aspect of the story that I'm not going to spoil. But it's a very important part of the story within the game itself. This, they still kind of achieve it without having to go to that location and dealing with the consequences of that location. So are you done your intro?
Yeah, so we'll talk more about my other positives and negatives and specifics, but I just wanted to get that out the way with my score. What about you, James? How did you feel after watching this? Because this is a big deviation from the game.
Huge. It is, and within the actual story that they're telling, I was fine with them telling the story. The problem I had with it, and I had a huge problem with it last night, was that within the scope of the story of Joel and Ellie, this doesn't amount to very much.
It doesn't.
I love the entire story. It does, though. Unfortunately, I didn't catch this at first, but I've come around to it, and I'll get to that. As an editor, one of my sort of things that I'm always looking for is there material that I can cut that won't affect the story?
Right.
And in a sense, you can kind of excise the entire Bill and Frank plot from Ellie and Joel's story. Just have them find the letter and they get the entire explanation of what happened between these two. You get the sense from the home, and you get the sense from them going through it that Bill was a prepper. Bill was, very survivalist and whatnot. Joel had a past relationship with him. There was a fondness for Frank based on the dialogue and all that stuff. So all of those things are kind of told within the bit that Joel and Ellie do. But there's something that isn't in there that I think is very important to the emotional story. And that's one of the themes they keep talking about with this is love.
Yeah.
And how the entire central concept of this game, this story, this show now is love. And they wanted to show all kinds of different facets of love. Most of the story is dependent on the love of a father for his daughter, and then a sort of surrogate daughter throughout this story. And we're starting to get to that. But the problem is that up until this point, Joel and Ellie have not been they've been at odds with each other. Joel just sees her as a mission. That's it.
Yep.
That's all he sees.
Yep.
And it's the development of the Bill and Frank story that gets him on board. It's the
That's a good
emotional
thread.
it's
You're
the
right.
emotional arc of seeing that there's two people who can love each other through this horrible, horrific situation, and we watch them go from complete strangers to someone who opens Bill, because Bill is a closeted homosexual,
Right.
and has kind of shut that part off of himself, and Frank awakened that. And Bill is very much at the very beginning the Bill that we know in the video games.
Yep.
And he grows into a
exactly.
completely different individual because of this relationship and because of this love. And we see that at the end. Like, it's heartbreaking that Bill wants to kill himself alongside Frank, but like at the same time it's beautiful and poetic because they've both lived a life. They've lived a very full life in a time when
did.
nobody else is getting to live that kind of life. Everybody else is scraping by to just try and survive.
And they
they're
live comfortably.
flourishing. You know, they've got a garden, they've got animals that they can, you know, hunt and kill or eat, and they've got a, you know, a protective barrier. They've got everything they could ever want, and they have each other. And the development of their characters through that is not only beautiful, but it's such an important turning point for Joel, because in the letter we've experienced Bill have this love, and Bill gives Joel, who has been mourning the loss of Tess, permission to let go.
Yep.
Permission to stop mourning Tess and to refocus on the mission of Ellie, that Joel is a protector,
Mhm.
just like Bill was. And Bill
Right.
protected Frank through good and bad, and now it's Joel's turn. And at first I was kind of in the same place you were, where it's like, this, I love this deviation because this is a beautiful story, but it, to me, it didn't fit into the narrative of The Last of Us until we got to that point, and I started to understand that there is a purpose to this. And I think because of that, I'm going to give it a 9.5.
Okay.
I know I've been giving
Fair.
solid 10s. Last night I wanted to give it an 8 as well, but I've kind of come around to, because the theme is so important to the story,
Right.
and because Bill and Frank are so important to the theme and showing us that, you know, love can
And
survive in this post-apocalyptic situation. It gives these characters permission, and you see that change in them towards the end, where they are starting to like they're cold at the very beginning. He doesn't want to tell her anything, and he's not getting along with her, and he's just sort of like standoffish with her. And at the end, they're starting to warm up to each other. And there's a moment where she's in the car and she's like flipping every knob and pushing every button and like turning the vents and everything.
that
And
was a
he's
great moment.
never been in a car before, and she's
Yeah.
like, it's like a spaceship. And then he tells her to put on her seatbelt. She's never put on a seatbelt before, so
Yep.
she has no idea what to do. So he does the fatherly thing and reaches across her to put on the seatbelt. And it's like, they're starting to fit these roles, and the Bill has given him that permission to let go and move on. And now we're going to be getting that relationship that is so central to the story and what everybody loved so much about the game.
And it was such a small scene, a small moment, but that's when you notice he's warming up to Ellie, and he's not, like, when he reaches over and helps her put her seatbelt on. To me, that's like a fatherly moment.
Yeah.
Like, if I do that with my daughter, you know what I mean? Like, if he was standoffish, she'd just tell her, hey, grab that, you know, put this here. Like, he would more tell her, not help her.
Yeah, something
And
has changed.
That was a great little moment. And honestly, I may steal on that. I didn't quite make that connection until you were like,
I didn't either until I listened to the podcast and they started to talk
okay.
about the sort of their, because I knew that they would do this, is that they put so much thought into this story, and a lot of the time it really shows. And then there's moments where it doesn't quite show until you're given a little more context, like we discussed last episode with the bread in the first episode.
yeah,
Or not the bread, but any of the flour products. We didn't put together the whole implication of what those really meant and why those were such a dangerous thing. And now we can go back and watch that and have that new context. And I feel like this is one of those things where it's like, there's authorial intent in this, and I think it's subtle and easy to miss. But I think because of the story they're trying to tell, what they refer to as a bottle episode becomes so important to this other character duo's development.
Right.
And while I would have loved to seen Bill from the game and that entire side venture that they do, the trap that I discussed, and you know, the ending that I thought was going to be the climax of this episode clearly wasn't. I kind of like what they did better, and this is why television is such a fascinating medium, is that when you're adapting something like this, you can take changes in course and add stuff to, because again, we didn't know Bill and Frank in the game. We get aspects of their relationship in sort of like subtle hints and dialogue bits and whatnot, but we didn't get to see them.
Yep.
Frank is already dead, and Bill is already pissed off at Frank. Frank has left him because Bill is so stubborn. And there's a moment in the show where you think that's going to happen too.
Yeah, when they
and
fight.
Frank actually breaks him down, and like Bill evolves. And I love that they get this second chance to tell this story of Bill. Now, of course, one of the things that makes me a little sad is that in the game, we don't know the fate of Bill.
Yeah,
It's
Bill is left open-ended, and that's why I was excited for if they would do that here, so that he could maybe be a returning character. But now, no, he's gone.
Well,
like in the game, it's
they
possible for
technically
him to
don't
return.
show them dead.
Huh?
We don't actually end up seeing them die. I know the implication is that they're supposed to be dead, but no body, no death kind of thing.
It's pretty well hinted. I mean, that place was dusty as hell. I mean, things were, really not well kept.
I have no doubt that Bill's actually dead, but it just that little seed of doubt is always enough for me to kind of think, could there be an opening for them to bring him back at some point?
I don't know, maybe because
I think for all
loved,
intents and purposes, they intend for him to be dead. But yes, it's
I loved Murray Bartlett as Frank. He did a great job, but freaking
Nick Offerman.
Sorry, yeah, my thing's acting up here. I don't know what's going on. It's stupid. I can't stand my computer sometimes. The computer doesn't know. But yeah, the guy who played Bill,
Nick Offerman.
Thank you. I had the casting put up here, and it's just not working. But he delivered in that first little bit we got of him as Bill, like the Bill we know from the game. I was like, oh yeah, he's Bill to a T. Yep. The scene where he's like, "No, if I give you a free meal, you're gonna run and tell your other friends you got a free meal from me." And this isn't an Arby's. Arby's was a restaurant.
It was a restaurant. You have to pay for
free meals. I was like, oh my god, that's or the scene with him and Joel. I love that scene. That scene with him, when Tess and Frank go in the room, go in the house and do what I don't know what. That little scene between them, it just showed that disgruntledness between them that was kind of in the game. And I do like you got hints of it, but I was looking forward to that moment. It's one of my favorite moments of the whole game. It really was. So that's my subjective side of me, but objectively, even the beginning, I still love it structurally. If you think about it, they're still giving us stuff that happens before the apocalypse and or during whatever.
And this fills in a lot of gap in that time period too, because they just jump from 2003 to 2023. In this, you actually see his development from, okay, this is where Fedras come to take everyone away. He's hidden in the basement, and then he spends the next several years building traps, building a fence, fortifying his house, setting up all of this arsenal and whatnot to be ready, and kind of takes over this little town square where he's got a liquor shop and
a little clothing store and
a clothing store. I think they said there was an art store too, but it's really he wants a liquor shop. And just seeing the development of everything he does, and then when Frank comes along, he takes it from it being utilitarian to making it a home.
Right.
When he shows up, he does the same thing where he wipes down something and there's dust collected, because Bill doesn't care about the condition of the house. It's shelter to him, and that's it. And then Frank wants to actually clean it up and make it nice, and you make it a home. And it's seeing that time period of them developing over that time is, you don't often get to see the progression of that. It's usually you're just thrown right into it kind of thing, or you're at the very beginning stages of it. Right. This, because it jumped so far ahead, I loved seeing their sort of journey through all that. But
now, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be completely wrong, because it's been a while since I played the game. I need to replay it just to remind myself storyline, so I know what's coming up. Did Joel and Ellie meet the two brothers? Because I know that, in the game it's gonna be a brother and a sister. But the two brothers that they meet in the city, do they meet them after or before Bill in the game? Do you remember?
If you're referring to who I think you are, I believe that's
Henry.
afterward.
It's
Yeah,
is it afterwards? Okay.
We're merging into spoiler territory here a little bit.
I'm sorry. Yes, we are, but because they're in the trailer quite a bit. Like even the trailers that we're in, so it's kind of a spoiler, but it's not really because there are casting names out there. We're not gonna get details, but
I do believe that comes afterwards.
okay. Then we're not gonna talk about it because I for some reason I thought it was before. I'm like I felt like they were skipping around.
No, because
we're not gonna give anything away
without discussing too much of it.
Yeah.
No, it definitely comes afterwards because there's something that happens in between those two parts.
Oh, okay, that's right.
That we've just kind of left off on, and that's they now have the truck.
Yeah, but let's get back to some of the specifics I really loved, and then we can go to you what you think in one of some of yours. And I really liked the character, not really the character progression, but kind of like I like to call it the extra character meat. Like it's more you're getting to know the character more. Like so in the beginning between Joel and Ellie, like when they're in the woods, and that was kind of a small little detail I really liked that he gave Ellie his coat to kind of keep warm. But I still think at that moment it was more like taking care of his mission for Tess. Yeah. But I love the little line that Ellie made because it gives so much more dynamic to her character. Like you can tell she feels sympathy through her acting. You can tell she feels sympathy that Tess is gone because she liked Tess. You could tell, and she has some sympathy for Joel. But as a protective person that she is of herself, he goes, I like the line. She goes, "Hey, about Tess." He goes, "Don't ever," she goes, "I wasn't gonna apologize. I'm just gonna say, don't blame me for your shit because you chose to do." Like, what I mean, that little moment is like, she's rude about it, but she's, she's being that, but that's who she is. Like, she's very protective of herself, being vulnerable to somebody.
Yeah.
So she lashes out just like Joel does, and that's why I love them as a pair. And I love that little moment because it just adds that more dynamic to her. Like you could tell she feels sympathy and she feels bad, but if he's gonna be an a-hole, well, okay, I'm gonna be an a-hole back then, and say, you know what I mean? Because I felt like before he said that, she was
she's standing up for herself.
Yeah. What'd you say? Sorry.
It's also important because she's standing up for herself. That
exactly. Yeah.
This isn't my fault. Don't make me your burden with this. I'm sorry it happened. I'm kind of heartbroken it happened too. I understand that you're heartbroken and you don't want to talk about it. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But don't put this on me.
Yeah.
And don't blame me for this.
I have a feeling just like her softer tone, she was going to say something like it, but lighthearted. But once Joel said it, she just turned off her filter and was just like, all right, fine. You know what I mean? Like, but that helped with the end scene where you could tell they're warming up to one another. Like, the whole joke she made about him after he got out of the shower, and there's certain things like that,
And more than that, it sets up she's trying to communicate with him. She understands that they're alone, and she's trying to communicate with him, but he's just shutting her down.
Right.
And there's a moment where they go, "How far is it to Lincoln?" And he goes, "It's a 5-hour hike." He's like, "Fine, we can do 5 hours."
Yeah,
but
she's
even
like, we
during
can make that work.
But she's saying it like, "This is going to be a chore, but I can survive 5 hours with you."
Yeah.
But even as they're walking down the road, before we even get to Bill, they're starting to you can see the cracks starting to form between them, and they're starting to warm up to each other, and they're making she's talking about airplanes and they're making jokes, and that segment also had a very heart-wrenching and brilliant flashback where
we need to talk about that scene too.
You see the bodies in there, and they talk about how Fedra, when people come to the QZ, and if the QZ is full, they don't just turn them away, they kill them.
I was like, oh my god, holy shit.
And they close in on a pair of corpses. One is very clearly smaller than the other, and it's wrapped in this cloth. And then they transition to a flashback of a mother and a baby in that same clothing. And it's like,
that broke me.
Oh God, are you going to show me them dying?
Yeah, they didn't, thank God, but still that's the implication though. So you're like, oh my God, these people killed a baby and a mother. Holy, that's insane.
And it's
another
you,
scene
you
I
watch
really
them being, kind of rounded up by Fedra. And it's they're going to their death now. This is it. They're trusting this government agency to take them to their safety, and they're going to their deaths. And it's this is 2 days into the infection, and it's it's already extended to this point. Jesus.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Sorry, you were saying.
But no, go. I have another moment I really liked. With Ellie. But let's get to you. What's some of the things that you really like stood out to you with this episode?
Well, there were two. One that had to be pointed out to me, and another one that is just a guilty pleasure for me. They've got their iconic shirts.
Yes,
They've been
they
missing
do,
these shirts.
finally.
Yeah, so Ellie's got the red one with the sun pattern on it, the faded sun pattern, and Joel's got his green shirt, and of course they already had their jackets, but now they're in like their iconic wardrobe that they spend the rest of the game in.
Too.
That was I love those little details, and it's something like most audiences are not going to notice, most audiences are not going to care, but anyone who's played the game is going to know those outfits, and it's like that is Joel's green plaid shirt, and that's Ellie's t-shirt, and
yep.
That was awesome. The moment that really stood out to me was when they're in the I can't remember what the name of the store was. It's an actual store.
Yeah.
But they go into the store and Joel is looking for sort of a bug out bag that he's hidden in there somewhere. And she walks out, she notices immediately and walks over to an arcade cabinet, and it's Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah.
And because this is HBO, which, you know, has some sort of, I don't understand the relationship between them and Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owns Mortal Kombat at this point.
Yep.
It was really cool to see that they apparently put in posters of Mortal Kombat into the second game. But there's this recurring plot point in the games where Ellie and another individual that we have yet to meet are obsessed with a game called Angel Knives. And I think this is supposed to be the replacement of that.
Mortal Kombat. Yeah, I think so too.
Because she's talking about how she talks about how a friend of hers was obsessed and would tell her all these details, and like there's this character called Melina, and her like mouth opens up, and it's like she's got
I
these
love that
gnarly
moment. Like she's so excited.
Yeah, but she's excited about a fatality within the game, not even the game itself, just like the description of like this person like vomiting bones up, and it's like.
But that also gives you a little detail into her character because she likes that kind of macabre stuff. At the same time, if you remember when she watches Joel beat that guy to death, she kind of enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you a hint of like who she is like mentally as far as when she sees graphic, horrific things. And it just that gives a little detail more into her character. Not necessarily it's a bad thing or a good thing, you know, that's how you view it.
And then they immediately follow that up with her going down into the bottom part of that thing. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up. Okay, go. You talk about it. Go for it.
So that scene, yeah, when she finds this thing, she goes down there and she finds. I don't even. What was the thing she found? I tried to pause. And I couldn't.
It was tampons.
Oh, okay.
Which of course in an apocalypse are going to be, hard to come by.
That makes so much more sense now. Okay, so I was like, what is she excited about? I tried pausing I watched it over. I tried pausing. I still can't tell what the hell that is. But that scene shows a lot about her and her thoughts on the infection itself. Now that she's immune, and she knows she is. Like when it's kind of like the Carl moment from Walking Dead, where he goes up to an infected and tries like, as a kid would, kind of like see what they can do to it and try and mess with it. And this one was more trapped than the one Carl encountered in season 2. He tried to mess with, but just that moment where she's just like she slices his head. And then she kills him, and she kills the thing, and it's just like it was those things. You could tell the fascination, but the fascination she has for this virus because she knows she's immune, but also just like wanting to kill something.
Yeah, she enjoys the violence.
Yeah, it really gets into that detail, that for sure.
Yeah.
Because Joel, he doesn't kill one unless he has to. He doesn't like messing with all that, but it seems like she. And maybe it's because she knows she's immune, but the thing I do love, I think it was a previous episode, I think Tess said, you are immune, but you're not immune from getting torn apart.
Yeah.
And these things can do that to you. And so I think like her doing that to one that's trapped, it kind of gave her that moment to do something that she's always wanted to do against one of them. And it kind of, you know what I mean? So it's a very interesting wrinkle that I don't think was in the game. So it's something that's going to be interesting to explore in this adaptation.
I think she always had sort of a fascination with the violence and was not as squeamish about the violence. There is a moment in the game, I think we're already past this part in the story, but where they encounter a bunch of guys and one of them is holding Joel under the water, and Ellie shoots him.
Yeah, I remember that one, yeah.
And there's this moment of like, this is the first time she's taken a life, and she's kind of shocked by it, but she gets over it kind of quickly, and it's like, she's been asking the entire time, both in the game and the show, for a gun, and she keeps getting denied, and she finally gets one at that point, and kind of saves Joel. But like it's this moment they kind of linger on.
Right.
I want to circle back for a quick second and talk about Nick Offerman, because we mentioned briefly how great he was, but I've long loved Nick Offerman as an actor. Parks and Recreation is one of my all-time favorite shows, and his character in that is one of my absolute favorite characters in all of television history, because he's just such a delight to watch. He's so good at deadpan and being the straight man to everyone else's wackiness, but at the same time can like be completely goofy himself. And the creators talk about one of the things they love to do. The guy who created Breaking Bad specifically has a mantra about casting comedic actors in serious roles, because they're much better about doing the serious stuff, but then they can like they're so good at doing like the beyond sort of like human level, like they're used to bathing in the absurdity of the world kind of thing, because they're so comedic. And I love that Nick Offerman is like, he's known for comedic roles. I think this is the first time I've seen him doing like a fully serious role, but even like him giggling over the strawberries was like my heart just kind of like grew two sizes at that, because it's like, how long has it been since he's seen strawberries and like tasting them and all that stuff? And watching him as this character, I knew he was going to be outstanding as Bill, because he does that sort of gruff frontiersman
disgruntled
kind of, like,
character.
And like he is naturally himself. Like he can like hand build you a canoe, because he's just that talented as a person. And like he does love the outdoorsy kind of stuff. So like I knew he was going to be perfect for this character. But like watching him grow and watching him as like a homosexual, kind of rediscovering his homosexuality, because he's suppressed it because, you know, they established that he's a conservative man, so like clearly within his community he probably wouldn't be very welcome, and like he probably didn't have any like there's a concept of unrequited love that they keep hinting at with the Linda Ronstadt song, that like maybe he loved somebody, but because of the community that they're in, they couldn't love each other, and he kind of closed himself off to that until he met Frank. And watching that character grow, and Nick Offerman's performance as like both of their performances, really, Murray Bartlett as well, but watching Nick Offerman's character change over time,
well, his range
so
too, from being very vulnerable to be very cautious to be very disgruntled to being very heartbroken, like he showed such range and subtlety in his performance. That I hope, I mean, this may be sounding hyperbolic here, but I hope there may be a campaign for him for best supporting actor for the Emmys for his
I would
role
love to see that. If this doesn't lead to that, I would hope that this at least leads to him getting
more
other serious roles, and he gets like what's his name in Breaking Bad,
Bryan
Cranston, who had been known for comedic roles, stepped into this absolutely dark, sinister role, and just knocked it out of the park, and has been like getting all kinds of serious roles left and right. I kind of hope that for Nick Offerman as well. The one thing, we're coming up to the end of our time, so I'm going to start wrapping up my thoughts here. One thing that did kind of, I'm kind of iffy on about this still, and I'd really like someone to explain it to me, is I feel like the impact of the radio signals was kind of lost through this.
It was, because it was just an automated thing.
Yeah, whereas like at the end of the episode, they linger on that radio to signify that something bad is coming, and the only thing that is really signifying is, and it's still bad, but it's like, it's not the danger that the audience is left to think it is. It's that these two men are dead, and he had a like automated system set up to play these songs to signify different things. But like if in the event that he died, it would play an 80s song to indicate, you know, I'm dead, something bad has happened, yada yada. And of course, because he died, he didn't get to reset the timer, and Joel and Ellie find the computer down there. Of course, they didn't hear that signal, but because of that moment at the end of the first episode where they linger on
as
that
an audience
radio,
member,
as an audience member, I'm led to believe that that's supposed to be something important, and it feels like they've kind of like reneged on that, and I'm kind of iffy like that. I don't know, that bugs me a little bit, and I want to see them. I don't know if this is going to be the end of that plot point or that device storytelling device, but I don't know, the resolution of it was disappointing to me.
I agree.
Otherwise,
I agree, yeah, 'cause-
I love this episode. Again, wrapping up my thoughts, I was like you last night where I was trepidatious because beautiful story, but where does it fit into this larger narrative that we're supposed to be telling? We're, a third of the story into it now, and they take, an hour or so, because this was a long episode.
Hour and 20
Um,
minutes.
Yeah, they took an hour or so to tell this bottle episode story about two characters who our characters don't end up meeting within this story. But having heard them discuss, their intentions behind it, I now see it a little bit differently, and I appreciate it more. So I went from an 8 back up to a 9.5. The only reason it loses points is because of the mechanism, and it is a bit of a slower paced episode, but it's developing a story. So I'm kind of okay with that. But otherwise, like, again, they're just knocking it out of the park, and when this being the biggest deviation they've taken, I'm okay with it. I miss the bits that aren't there, but I feel like they can kind of reuse those in other places. Later in the story, it doesn't necessarily need to be connected to Bill, and we get a much more fleshed out story for Bill and Frank. We actually get to know Frank in this, and I feel like, again, because this is Neil Druckmann's second crack at the egg kind of thing, where he gets to tell these stories again. He gets to expand upon this relationship that was otherwise just hinted at, and I thought they did it beautifully and masterfully. And
yeah, I agree. I enjoy it. Like I said, I was just torn because the game fan of me wanted to see certain things, and I didn't get those, and maybe that was my expectation. But subjectively, like, there was things that worked well in the game thematically and for the story that they didn't tell here. It was a little different. But either way, objectively, beautiful story, great performances. I still enjoyed the hell out of it. I mean, I'm still enjoying this world that they're giving us, and every week I look forward to another episode. And it reminds me back when I was watching Game of Thrones for the first time back in the day, when it's like, it's earlier seasons, like you're so invested, and you're just there. You know what I mean? And like, do a good job of even further explaining the cordyceps and how to explain to her how they theorized how this all took place, like how this all spread. And they did a good job because they reiterated what us fans, if you analyzed it, figured out.
Yeah.
It's from the flower, it's from this and that, or it could have been, from this and that. So, like, I even like how he hung on pancake mix, because the pancake mix remembered him from Sarah because they didn't make pancakes. Like, things like that, like this little details that I appreciate in the screenplay that make me love this show so much, and the direction. So I'm looking forward to the next episode. I think we said last episode, I'm hoping if James is feeling up to it, we can do the review that Sunday night so that we can get this to you guys hopefully on Mondays. But we'll hopefully have this up here soon. But that'll do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching and breaking this down with us. More importantly, what did you think of The Last of Us Episode 3? Leave your comments section below. Give us your thoughts if you're seeing this as just a show, or if you played the game and now you're watching the show. Give us your thoughts on how they adapt this and how much deviation you liked, or what you didn't like about it. Also, if you like what you watched, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's like we said, you can receive all of our great content we have coming for you here on Real Time. Again, I'm Josh Williams.
I'm Jabe Sheridan.
And thank you for keeping it real
with Real Time.
Good night.